After 36 years, Star Trek is finally calling out its most controversial movie. When Star Trek V: The Final Frontier beamed into theaters in 1989, the franchise was flying high. Star Trek: The Next Generation was building a new fan base on television, and the original crew of the USS Enterprise had just delivered a fan-favorite film with Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. But when The Final Frontier, directed by Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner, hit screens, the momentum hit a warp core breach. Critics panned it. Fans scratched their heads. And for 36 years, the film has remained the black sheep of the Star Trek cinematic family, an ambitious, philosophical mess with moments of brilliance buried under awkward humor, poor effects, and a plot that dared to ask, what does God need with a starship? Now, in 2025, Star Trek is finally doing what it has long avoided, calling out the final frontier with nuance, humor, and a healthy dose of retrospective love. In a remarkable bit of meta-commentary, recent Star Trek content has not only acknowledged the film's existence, something the franchise has largely avoided, but has begun to weave its controversial legacy into the fabric of the canon in bold new ways. The movie that went where no Trek had gone before and maybe shouldn't have. To understand why Star Trek V was so divisive, we have to understand what it was trying to be. Shatner envisioned a story that tackled big questions, faith, spirituality, and the eternal human quest for meaning. At the film's heart is Sibuk, Spock's half-brother, who hijacks the Enterprise to seek out God at the center of the galaxy. What he finds is not the divine but a malevolent alien imprisoned for eternity. On paper, it's pure Trek, big questions, strange new worlds, and a deep dive into what makes us human. But the execution was marred by a rushed production, a slash budget, and studio interference. The special effects, handled by a company unfamiliar with Trek, fell flat. The humor was uneven. And the plot, full of holes, felt disjointed even to loyal fans. Still, for all its flaws, the movie has its defenders. Its core trio, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, share some of the most emotionally resonant moments in the entire series. From campfire chats about pain and purpose to McCoy's heartbreaking memory of euthanizing his father, there are glimpses of greatness beneath the chaos. A long silence in the franchise. Despite, or perhaps because of, its reputation, The Final Frontier quickly became the forgotten chapter of the saga. Later films barely referenced it. Even when Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country was released just 2 years later, it functioned like V had never happened. Fans joked that the Enterprise crew suffered collective amnesia. Even in the era of Star Trek, Discovery, Picard, and Strange New Worlds, Final Frontier was a ghost. Canon that dealt heavily with Vulcan culture, Klingon history, and the Federation's flaws never touched on Sibuk or his radical quest. It was as though Star Trek V existed in a narrative black hole, acknowledged only by die-hard fans and mocked on occasion. Until now. Strange New Worlds breaks the silence. In a move that shocked Trekkies in the best way possible, Star Trek: Strange New Worlds Season 2 did what no other series had dared. It reintroduced Sibuk. In the episode The Serene Squall, audiences were stunned when a mysterious prisoner turned out to be none other than Spock's rogue half-brother. Though his face remained hidden, the name was spoken. The implication was clear. The franchise was no longer ignoring The Final Frontier, it was integrating it. This moment wasn't just fan service, it was a bold reclamation. Strange New Worlds, with its deft balance of humor, drama, and nostalgia, is uniquely positioned to rehabilitate Sibuk and retroactively lend weight to Star Trek V. By acknowledging Sibuk as a layered, ideological figure rather than just a plot device in a messy movie, the show gave the character room to grow. It was also an act of narrative bravery. Bringing back Sibuk wasn't a gimmick, it was a statement. Star Trek was finally ready to look its most controversial movie in the eye. The franchise's newfound self-awareness, but Strange New Worlds wasn't finished. In its most recent episodes, the show has leaned into the legacy of The Final Frontier with surprising earnestness. Characters have referenced the concept of seeking a higher power in the stars. Spock's emotional journey has begun to echo the themes of faith and logic that defined his relationship with Sibuk. And Pike's crew, like Kirk's before them, is confronting the limits of science in the face of cosmic mystery. This isn't accidental. The writers are clearly treating The Final Frontier not as a joke, but as a flawed but fascinating text worthy of exploration. The very act of reintroducing civic in a show that respects canon without being shackled by it is a kind of cultural apology and a reappraisal. Meanwhile, Lower Decks, Star Trek's animated comedy series, has taken a different approach. In true irreverent style, it has poked fun at Final Frontier with references to god planets, marshmallow cookers, and shirtless Kirk wrestling rock monsters. But even here, the tone is affectionate. The joke isn't that Star Trek V is worthless, it's that it tried so hard to be profound and missed the mark in gloriously entertaining ways. It's a form of healing. The franchise is finally laughing with the movie, not at it. Why now? Why did it take 36 years for Star Trek to confront the final frontier? Part of it is generational. Fans who grew up watching the movie on VHS, who saw its weirdness as part of Trek's charm rather than a betrayal of it, are now writing the stories. There's a growing understanding that not all Trek has to be perfect to be meaningful. There's also a broader cultural shift. Nostalgia is no longer limited to the greatest hits. Flawed cult classics, from Batman Forever to The Phantom Menace, are being reevaluated by new audiences. There's an appetite for second chances, for nuance, for understanding the context behind artistic failures. The Final Frontier was a product of ambition and constraint. Shatner, for all his ego, was trying to say something important. In many ways, his movie was ahead of its time, interrogating organized religion, the search for spiritual truth, and the pain we carry. In today's era of prestige sci-fi that embraces philosophical depth, Severance, For All Mankind, Foundation, Final Frontier doesn't seem so outlandish after all. The redemption arc. The redemption of Star Trek V isn't complete. The movie still has its issues, and even diehard fans admit it's not the franchise's finest hour. But that's not the point. What matters is that the franchise is finally engaging with it. By reclaiming civic, referencing the film's ideas, and allowing room for growth, Star Trek is doing what Star Trek does best, evolving. There's even talk among fans that Strange New Worlds could lead to a full-fledged civic arc, possibly culminating in a new version of the journey to the Galactic Center. With modern effects, a seasoned writing team, and a new philosophical lens, the core concept of the Final Frontier could be revisited and reimagined. And who knows? Maybe we'll finally get the rock monster Shatner always wanted. Final thoughts. Boldly looking back, Star Trek has always been about looking forward into the future, into new frontiers. But sometimes, to boldly go, you have to look back. You have to confront the uncomfortable, the imperfect, and the misunderstood parts of your legacy. By finally calling out the Final Frontier, Star Trek isn't just acknowledging a movie, it's embracing its own complexity. It's reminding us that even our failures contain wisdom. Even our missteps deserve reflection.